Yes, after 44 years, the Washington Capitals has won the Stanley Cup. And we'll talk about soccer later. Today is Stanley Cup today. World Cup today will be later. But joining us on the line now, the two biggest Washington Capitals fans in the soccer world, you probably could say, Duane Rollins and Jonathan Tannenwald. Gentlemen, congratulations.
Thanks, Kevin. It was a pretty good night. How you doing, Jonathan?
I'm in about as bad shape as you are.
So that was real, right?
So you guys know, and I think most of your listeners know, that I refused to watch almost every second of the entire thing.
Wow.
Soup to nuts. And when I was out last night doing a radio show about the Union, actually, and was very happy to not be watching. And I got home when there were about 30 seconds left in the game, and I said, okay, I'll finally put the TV on. And I watched the last 30 seconds of the game.
Oh, man.
And it was just, I just lost it.
I don't know how you managed not to watch it. Third period, it's 3-2 Golden Knights. And then the former Montreal Canadiens of the Washington Capitals stood up. Devontae Smith-Pelly, what a goal, what a play. While falling down on the ice surface, was able to just slip the puck past Fleury for the tying goal. And then, of course, Lars Eller with the Stanley Cup clinching goal. Thank you, Montreal.
I don't know how you managed to watch it. I don't know how Tony Marinaro and Brian Wilde managed to watch it.
Yeah, no, I'm going to tell the story maybe later. That's the thing. The Capitals, I don't hate the Capitals at all. They're one of the reasons when I was a kid I've stopped being bullied for a few weeks is because of the Capitals, and we'll talk about this later. But last night, the win, Ovechkin, after 14 years in the league, finally getting the Stanley Cup and the Conn Smythe Trophy. As Capital Washington fans, like, Jonathan, we know you were born and raised in the Washington, D.C. area, and it makes sense. But where did your love of the Washington Capitals comes from, Jonathan?
Well, it's not just the Washington, D.C. area. I was born and raised in the district itself, which actually made it a little harder for me to go to games as a kid because the old Capitol Center was way out in Landover. You had to drive to it. But I wasn't really much of a basketball fan growing up. I wasn't much of a Bullets fan. I was a football fan. I rooted for the football team, as everybody did in Washington for many, many, many years, especially in those years when they played at RFK Stadium, and were a far more dignified and classy organization than they are now. And of course, as the longtime running joke has been in Washington, that team name is less racist when they're winning. But you guys have long enough memories of the era of Darryl Green and Art Monk and so on, and they were that organization felt very different then than it does now.
Well, I'm a Cowboys fan, Jonathan, so I know,
yes,
know them well.
In the era of Joe Gibbs and all those guys, there were such as professional athletes ever are, it felt like there were good people on that team, and they were a classy organization. And Kevin, cover your ears.
Done.
Okay. My Nationals weren't around until what? 2004, 2005.
2005.
So I gave up on the football team some years ago now. And the baseball team has only been around for a decade and a half or whatnot. So the Capitals are the one team that have been mine my entire life. And I'm a sports writer, and I'm not supposed to root, and so on. But what I tell people is, and you see this often enough, you cover one sport, whether it's baseball or soccer or whatever, and the all of us who are especially transparent about the work that we do, I think the way journalism is these days, it's sort of understood that, okay, you're not going to have a team in the sport that you cover, but you might have one in some other sport. That's okay, because everybody grew up somewhere, you know? And I grew up in the District of Columbia. And so the Capitals have been my team for my entire life. And they have crushed me again and again and again
and again.
And they won the Stanley Cup this year. And it's kind of amazing. And at some point next week, I'm going to go home for a parade on Pennsylvania Avenue.
They somehow won the Stanley Cup in the year that no one expected them to, too. It's an amazing journey, Jonathan. I mean, my origin story is stranger and weird, and it doesn't make any sense. But I've been there since '85 was the first season that I cheered for this team as a little boy. So yeah, it was pretty amazing. Can you think, Jonathan, obviously, today is a different story than it was yesterday, but can you think of another team in all of sports that has been as frustrating?
Sure.
Buffalo Bills.
The Bills, maybe. Yeah, that's a good show.
In the present tense, like as we're measuring right now?
Yeah, sure.
Well, look, I mean,
the Sharks?
Well, I have relatives who grew up I've had relatives in Boston, still do. And we all understood when the Red Sox won the World Series in 2004, what that meant. We all understood what the Cubs won the World Series, 2 years ago, what that meant. Certainly for me living in Philadelphia when the Eagles won the Super Bowl. This year, I understood what that meant to them, to this city where I live now. There's one difference, I think. It is part of the essential character of Washington. That so many people there are transient. They come in when there's a new president or Congress, and then they leave a few years later. So those of us who grew up there, who are actually of the place, who really have those rooting allegiances deeply in ourselves and the understanding of the lack of voting rights in Congress and so many other things. There aren't many of us, And so it means a little more when I see the scenes like I saw last night outside the arena of tens of thousands of people out on the street. What is it, as many people as were on the streets when the Eagles won the Super Bowl? No, probably not. But this isn't a size measuring contest, I think. Certainly not for people in Washington, certainly not for me.
Now,
it's about the fact that this morning Washington feels a little more like a city than it sometimes does, because there are not a lot of things that bond the people there. One of the reasons why I like Philadelphia and certainly Montreal. In Montreal, and I'd say even more in Montreal than Toronto, but certainly in Toronto too, the civic fabric is very strong. And when you're there, even as a visitor, you feel it. So I'm very happy for Washington in that regard today too.
Fair enough. does this change what it means to be a Capitals fan? Because I think part of us have always kind of identified with that. No, damn it, I'm going to stick with this team even though they're going to cut me every year.
So, are you asking if it's okay to cheer with them now that they're not losers anymore?
Well, yeah, pretty much, yeah.
No, it absolutely. Again, like the Eagles and the Red Sox and the Cubs and the Cavaliers when they won the NBA title. Remember how bad they were for many, many years. It does change things, sure. I think we always knew, but the difference between, say, the Capitals and the Cubs were the lovable losers for all those years. You know, sometimes they were just really bad. You went to Wrigley Field because it was Wrigley Field and they were your team, but they were really bad. The Capitals have made the playoffs, year after year after year. And never won the thing. They've always been very good. And now they've gone all the way. That's the difference.
Well, that's why I asked whether the most frustrating team is, because they have not been bad. They've been very good for 30 years. They have, if you look back at that late 80s, early 90s kind of period, yeah. They were excellent then. They made the final in 98. That was a bit of a fluke run, I think, but then they've been good in the last the last 5, 6, 7 years. What was it? 2 straight Presidents trophies and out to the damn Penguins.
Was 98 Jim Carrey? Was that the year Jim Carrey was there? I think so, right? Because it was the 1 year wonder.
That's a little earlier than that, but yeah, 98's Joe Juneau's goal against Buffalo, but they had no chance in that final.
Yeah, Dominic Hasek. Like, what do you want to do? Like, Dominic Hasek. Like, can't do anything. But speaking of former glories, Alex Ovechkin finally raised. Go ahead.
I'll tell you, by the way.
Go ahead, Jonathan.
I've been alive since November of 1983. Only 7 times in my 34 years have the Capitals not made the playoffs.
That's impressive.
They're very good. They've been very good for a long time. The fact they had won is why people, hung that choker label on them. I have basically their biggest rival is a team that I'm going to bash the Penguins here for a second here.
By all means.
Yeah, that tanked to get Mario Lemieux, and then had a generational player that allowed them to be a dominant team for several years, and then won the lottery to get Sidney Crosby. So
it's true. It's true.
If there's a luckier team, let me ask you this, Jonathan, and Kevin, you can throw in too. Is there a luckier team on earth than the Pittsburgh Penguins? Vegas? Who I can't believe I'm talking about the day after the Caps won the cup.
Well,
how cold were the balls in the pot?
Yeah, that saved the franchise, didn't
it? That's one of the only tricks. Interesting.
Look, which is I don't mean to say that that's an absolute, but still,
like
was it really going to be any other team?
No, none of us were shocked. No. Anyway. Congratulations to the Penguins for their dominance over the last 2 years, but it's done now.
It's done now.
They can go jump in a lake, really.
So beating Marc-Andre Fleury in the Stanley Cup final, former Penguin, does it make it even sweeter? It doesn't.
Oh, sure.
It doesn't help. Sure. You're like, okay, fine. We actually beat Fleury too, so this is worth it.
So the Capitals on the way here. They beat the Penguins. They beat the Tampa Bay Lightning, who they'd never beaten in the playoffs before, by the way. And then they beat Marc-Andre Fleury.
And they overcame a 3-1 lead, which is...
Yes.
Yeah, they won it in Vegas. I was realizing after the game last night that this might be better than winning the cup at home. You're already in the Party City. You're already there next to the Strip with the cup. You have money. You have things organized. The next 24 hours are going to be a whirlwind in Vegas.
No, there's really not. There's still nothing like winning it all at home.
Okay, fair.
But I think if they had lost last night, all of us would have just gone bananas thinking they were going to choke.
Oh yeah, they had to win last night. That was everything. If they go from 3-1 to 3-2, there's not a single voice in the entire hockey world that's not going, the Capitals. They've blown them 5 other times, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, they had to win last night. Look, this is a team. I actually believe they were going to win from the moment that they scored, against the Penguins in overtime. That was the moment that I was, okay, this is real. At that point, it was all done to me.
No, I didn't.
You didn't?
No.
Maybe it's because I'm a little bit outside. I was just watching this, and I've seen them for a long time, and there's just something very different about this.
Look, I agree there's something very different. But I'm just that cynical. I'll say this, the first time in this run that I thought they might actually win the whole thing at some point was when they signed TJ Oshie.
Oh, yeah. Why is that, Jonathan?
It's been, 2 years almost? Two years?
Because he's the kind of player who can really, I think, deliver a championship. The kind of hustle player who would do it, and it happened, and he's so good.
Yeah, and the story of his father right now is quite impressive too. His father has Alzheimer's disease, but he was present last night, and after the game, after the celebrations, TJ Oshie was talking to CBC's own John Oak, and he was talking about how, look, this is amazing, the best feeling. My father's in here. He doesn't remember a lot these days, but I can guarantee you that this moment will last a lifetime for him.
Yeah, that was a good interview. I just watched that a few minutes ago, actually, again. Jonathan, maybe we'll end with this. I mean, at the end of the game, were you thinking of old Caps? What was the exact moment when you watched those final 30 seconds that you were thinking of? Because I can tell you that I was just punching things randomly is what I was doing. But
I hope everyone's okay.
It just the wood. I have a bruise. I was just feeling my hand when I was talking there, and I have a bruise. And I go, "Why have I bruise?" Oh yeah, that's why. Anyway, Jonathan, what exactly went through your mind on those final seconds? I mean, were you screaming out for Mike Ridley, or what was your thoughts?
I was thinking about Peter Bondra.
Nice. That's the name I know. That's good.
Who was one of my childhood sporting heroes. How close he came, but didn't win it. Some of my favorite athletes as a kid: Bondra, Michael Pavanka, Dino Ciccarelli, Dale Hunter, Rod Langway. Never won it.
Al Iafredi.
Sure, Al Iafredi.
George McPhee's mustache.
Ole Kolzig, who was a developmental coach with the Capitals now, got to lift the Stanley Cup last night, and that was when I just about lost it again.
I didn't realize that one. That's amazing. Yeah, because it's back in those days.
Olaf Kolzig, the best German goalkeeper ever in the National Hockey League.
Probably, yeah. My favorite player growing up was actually Kelly Miller. I don't know why. I'm a weird kid, but anyway, Kelly Miller. He was a penalty killer, about a 20-goal a year scorer, third line guy. He was my guy.
Oh, Jonathan mentioned the name Dino Ciccarelli, and that's a good segue to my little story about the Washington Capitals. And I was telling Duane earlier today, I'm not as big of a Capitals fan as you guys were, and I haven't followed hockey that closely in the last decade, and I'm not necessarily a diehard fan, but last night it hit home, and last night I remembered a little story that I have from my childhood. When I was a kid, I wasn't that rich. We weren't that had a lot of means, and I did not even have a Montreal Canadiens jersey. For a kid in the suburb of Montreal, I was playing hockey with my friends outside, and I was the only one with no jerseys, and I was being made fun of and ridiculed for that fact. And I knew I couldn't have a Montreal Canadiens jersey. Back then, there was no fakes, and there was only like really expensive ones. So we didn't have the means to do so. So one day, my dad's on a work trip abroad in the United States, and he finds a Dino Ciccarelli Capitals jersey, the same one Ovechkin's wearing, on the screen behind me. The Capital, the white one, the red shoulders, and the classic one that we all imagine in our minds. That's the one I had when I was like 6 years old, 7 years old. Then I could finally play hockey outside without being ridiculed. And since that point, I like the Capitals.
That's a good story. It sounds like a classic children's book, actually, but at least it wasn't a Leaf shirt.
At least it wasn't a Leaf shirt, and it wasn't from Eton. So at least that's better.
There you go.
But it's a bit that story. Yeah, you're right. Duane, we asked Jonathan his origin story for the Capitals, and yours is a bit different. Where did yours start?
Oh, Jesus. So I didn't grow up in Toronto. For those who don't know, I grew up in and around Belleville, Ontario, which is halfway between Toronto and Montreal. 40% of my friends were Habs fans, 40% were Leafs fans, and the other 20 were weird. I was weird. So I just picked the team, basically, as a kid, as a young child, because there was something about them that spoke to me. Maybe I liked the jerseys. Maybe I liked the underdog status of it. I don't know. It's hard to say, but it was been very much from there, from the day one. The only team that I have cheered for longer, that I have more memories for, are the Toronto Blue Jays, and that makes more sense. But they just spoke to me in some unknown level when I was 8 years old, and that's when I started to cheer for them, and that's what it's been. Okay, here's the strange story is I kind of had a crush on a girl that had the same first name as one of the players in the team's last name. So that's kind of probably why I picked them, but I don't like to admit that out loud because.
In what year was this?
It's Dave Christian's name anyway.
I don't even remember him. That's a pretty good one.
Yeah, we're going back. We're 85. Kristen was the girl's name, but anyway.
Wayback Machine.
And I told this story to a national sports columnist last night on Twitter, so hopefully I'm not in the paper today as
we don't know.
a named source.
Can't guarantee that. Maybe you are in the paper somewhere around Canada. Who knows? Maybe everywhere in Canada. But where does this leave things? All right. Ovechkin got his first cup. He's 14 season in. He's a commercial for Just for Men waiting to happen. Where does this victory, this raising of the cup, leave Ovechkin for the next few years? And the team itself. It's a team that was a bit rejuvenated from last year with a bunch of young players coming through and the veterans of Backstrom and Ovechkin still pulling their weight, but the TJ Oshis and the other great supporting cast helping them. Where does this victory leave the Washington Capitals? We'll start with Duane.
Laughing all the way to the bank. They won. They finally won. No, I think they're going to repeat. No, but Jesus, this was fun.
And Jonathan, what are you wishing this victory does for the club?
Well, I know this much. The next time I go to Toronto and I go to the Hockey Hall of Fame and I go to look at all those little Stanley Cup trophies that they have in the store, and I've wanted for so long to buy one with the Washington Capitals logo on it, I'm finally going to be able to.
So you're going to buy one? Yes, for sure.
If I don't buy one today.
Jonathan, going to the Hall of Fame, which is, I could walk there from where I am right now, in the next week is something that's going to happen. I've never had my photo taken with the cup. I'm going to now.
Oh, I have because I knew that was going to be as close as I ever came.
That's yeah. That's amazing.
If you see anything there, Duane, let me know.
Okay, well, there's a shockingly lack of Capitals gear at the Hall of Fame store. I've actually complained to them. I apologize to Tiffany, whoever. I think that might have been Melissa, some girl that
I
I was yelling at.
apologize to the clerk at the desk that I yelled at her and threw her stuff.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but get some
Well,
Capitals.
I mean, look, there'll obviously be more capital stuff there now, but I it's the one thing that the Hall of Fame sells that they always have. They're sort of toward the back, on the way out of this toward the street exit. They have that, and they have all those little Stanley Cups with the various logos on them, and that's the one. That's the one I want.
Yeah.
Hey, it's a nice little memorabilia.
I got high-fived by a stranger yesterday walking down the street with my Caps jersey on, so I probably should take this off at some point, but not today.
Yeah, today you can keep it. Tomorrow you can wash it. You can wear it again, but it's going to get old real quick.
Yeah.
I know, you can enjoy it. Never mind everybody else. Enjoy it. The Capitals won the Stanley Cup. And for the next 364 days, they'll be known as defending champions.
Jonathan, before we let you go, I'm going to ask you one soccer question to segue ourselves here.
Aye. That's not that there's a game tonight that in theory we're going to be paying attention to.
Yeah. Soccer? Okay.
Yeah,
I can do that.
It's Union and TFC. I mean, it's not
Yeah, well, I want to ask you about TFC. You're an outside perspective. What's wrong with them?
I don't know. Honest to goodness, I don't know.
Sorry, go ahead.
There's obviously been a hangover. I think some of the guys that they got rid of, they had to. But I think it might have, especially defensively, I think it might have overcooked things a little bit.
Yeah, it's a hard one to do because logically you look at them on paper and you go, this is still the best team in the league, but they sure as hell aren't playing like it right now. So it becomes a very, very hard at what point do you change the narrative? At what point do you say, okay, well, this is a team that's going to struggle to make the playoffs? I mean, I was talking to Kurt Larson in the press box last game, and he believes, not to speak out of turn for Kurt, but he believes that this is a team that's going to be lucky to get sixth, and that was his take. And at that point, I was still like, they could still get top three in the division. Now, after that 3-0 blown lead, I'm kind of on board with that. That scraping in is all this team can possibly do, and at some point we have to stop thinking of them as last year, which was a wonderful team. A great team last year, and this is a similar team, but there's just something missing.
I'm looking something up real quick, and let's see here.
Yep.
You know who I think what I think that something that's missing is?
What's that?
Health?
No. I think there's 3 somethings that are missing that matter quite a bit. Stephen Beitashour, Drew Moore, and Justin Morrill.
Defenders.
Well, yeah, I mean, the defense has been a problem. Well, they have 3 goals in the last 10 minutes, right?
But it's not just that the defense has been bad. It's those 3 particular guys who are really great glue guys in the league.
Yeah, the Beitashour move was the one that I think a lot of people here point to and say, don't know about that one. Like there's not a lot you can criticize with what Bezbatchenko and Vanny have done as a management team, but that one, it was like, well, it's an MLS lifer. Kevin and I talk about MLS lifers all the time, and why are you getting rid of this guy because he matters? I mean, you can't you can't predict Moore's injury or Morrow's injury, but getting rid of Betashore for something shinier might have been, the mistake that they regret the most.
Well, but if you only get rid of Betashore and you still have Moore and Morrow, maybe they're okay. But it seems to me, at least, that, as I said, maybe it all happening at once was a little much.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
I hope you
Jonathan,
enjoyed our
champion. They won. We lived to see it. We lived to see it.
It happened. I hope you enjoyed our
We sure did, fellas.
special Stanley Cup today. You can follow Jonathan Tannenwald on social media at @JTannenwald, and follow Jonathan as well on his soccer account at The Goalkeeper. You can follow Duane at 24th Minute and myself at Kev Laramee. We'll be back with World Cup today at 11. And until next hockey show, well, enjoy the cup.